Over the course of the preceding couple of weeks, we have seen two examples of cancel culture in all its putrid pride, aimed against the same kind of people, for the same kind of reasons, and with the same kind of goals. And yet, despite these similarities, the outcome could not have been more different. In the case of Five Nights at Freddy's creator Scott Cawthon, he decided to resign from the active running of the franchise that he created after a sustained media campaign, doxing and threats leveled against both his person and his pregnant wife. In the other example, where the cancel culture crowd went after a Factorio developer, not only did that not end with his resignation, but it has seen Factorio receive thousands of new positive reviews and sales. Which leaves us with a very important question to ask and answer. Why? Why did two similar internet incidents end up with such radically different resolutions? Unsurprisingly, a lot of it, of course, has to do with the reactions of the community, or lack thereof, and the attitudes of the developers in question. So let us begin at the very start, shall we? What caused all of this nonsense to begin with? Twitter. Obviously. It is the metaphorical hill which the shit rolls down. In the case of Five Nights at Freddy's, it started with this tweet. Bluey capsules. We are unanimously appalled by the discovery that Scott Cawthon has donated large sums to prominent Republican figures. As a diverse team composed largely of LGBT and neurodivergent artists, it's difficult to properly express the magnitude of our disappointment. Which is why we will be holding a fundraising stream for the benefit of the communities we just claimed to belong to, where we will reveal the rest of this scandal. Oh, I'd say you're dealing with the disappointment quite well, and in a plausibly capitalistic manner, if I may say so myself. The Factorio nonsense, meanwhile, technically started on Reddit, though it didn't gain any real traction until it got on Twitter. It began with a post saying that the Factorio devs should be very careful associating themselves with a character by the name of Uncle Bob, because he was problematic. Controversial indeed. To which the developer responded, "Take the cancel culture mentality and shove it up your ass." Every time. Clap, 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 clap. That right there is one of the main differences as well. Whereas Scott Cawthon did not outright raise the white flag, he did not bite back. Kovarex came out swinging right from the get-go. This response, by the way, was removed by the Reddit moderators for personal attacks. Reddit. It did, however, then spread on Twitter, where it gained whatever little traction it did, with this post right here. Wait till Kovarex finds out a good chunk of the game's fanbase is trans. What that has to do with anything, you may ask? Nobody quite really well knows. And after that, they started digging through Kovarex's posting history as well to try and find some form of ammunition to use to cancel him. Feeling the momentum was going their way, they spilled on out onto the Steam discussion topics for Factorio. That turned out to be a very large mistake, as the topic was not received as expected, and the Steam forums was where the counter-offensive began, as the fans rallied en masse behind the Factorio developer. At the time when I'm recording this, Factorio has received around about 3 1,000 new positive reviews and a little under 100 negative. Unfortunately, however, this outpouring of support was not mirrored in the Five Nights at Freddy's case. It did receive a bunch of positive reviews and didn't get a whole lot of negative ones, but nothing in comparison to Factorio. This is undoubtedly in part due to the fact that Five Nights at Freddy's is spread over multiple titles, and it is also a much older game, 6 years old, but the potential for support in Five Nights at Freddy's should have been much, much larger. It is a huge franchise. It has literally created the careers of YouTube superstars. I have a tool on the back end of my YouTube that allows me to see some of the statistics of certain things. The highest viewed video has 221 million views. The average views is 66 million. The average subscriber count of the people making content for it is 83,000. And if you scroll through recent releases concerning Five Nights at Freddy's, you'll see a bunch of people making a variety of content about it, yet very few actually talked about the controversy, quote unquote. It was mostly channels like mine, for example, that talk about cancel culture, that talk about entertainment in general. Very few of the people who have had their careers made by this game actually decided to address it at all. And of course, that is their prerogative. Content creators do not owe Scott Cawthon anything just because they create content surrounding one of his games, his universe or his titles, obviously. Though I would think that in this particular controversy, it would be very, very easy to defend him. As what is Scott being cancelled for? We haven't touched upon that yet, have we? He is being cancelled for making political donations to politicians that he himself personally prefer. That should be a pretty easy thing to defend. An individual in a democratic country should surely be free to make any political donations they want personally and privately without that being a reason to try and take away the universe he created. Because if you do that to one person, for a second just stop and think about the precedents that sets. And luckily, in this, even fairly staunch left-wing commentators and their audiences like Jim Sterling, for example, here, the audience seem to understand that, yeah, this is not a good reason to cancel someone. And if you need further convincing, Scott Cawthon is not a man of small virtues. This right here is a list of various donations he has given over the course of his career. It amounts to over $1 million to various charitable causes. This does not seem to be a particularly bad dude, and I certainly don't think that donating some money to Republicans, dun 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 dun, is anywhere near enough reason to simply wipe away all of this. But of course, what happened next seems to suggest otherwise. There are two primary factors here to take into mind. The first is, of course, the response of the community. In the case of Factorio, a near unified and vociferous fan base stood up right behind the creator and said, no, you don't get to cancel this individual. In fact, if you're pissed off about something he did, we're gonna love him more for it. Go away. And this was undoubtedly bolstered by the developer's own hard response to it. Shove it up your ass. Another beautiful post by the developer is this one right here. Why am I the right-wing bigot again? I hear it again and again, and yet I didn't hear any reasons for that claim. This clearly shows the weird, one-dimensional world you see. Everyone is either a friend or an enemy, and we need to decide fast. All I did is to deny bashing on someone's professional work for his political views. I didn't even know what they are, and somehow you had to put me on your political axes somewhere, and since your political axis is so full of hate, you assume that I hate you or LGBT plus people, or whatever you don't like about the other side of your axes. You have to understand that I'm not from the US, and I'm nowhere on your little axes. I'm not your friend or your enemy. I'm just a guy who would like to decouple ideas from people. That is a brilliant response. It refuses any blame, it refuses to bend the knee, and it exposes his attackers for exactly what they are. They are hateful people. They are quite literally everything they accuse their opposition of. They are intolerant to the extreme, and no tactic is ever too low for them. And when you call them out like this, when you stridently oppose them, 9 times out of 10, they slink away. They give up because you're not a soft target. Meanwhile, on the Five Nights at Freddy's side of things, we have 2 big factors again. 1, the fan response was very hesitant. It was doubting. It didn't really get its foot under it. And a large part of this is due to Scott Cawthorn's own immediate response. I'm not going to read it all out here because it is quite lengthy, and you can see from the upvote as well that it was a popular response too, but it is not a call to action. It is not a refutation of his attackers. If anything, it's kind of accepting their premises. He is not throwing back their accusations, he is simply excusing himself. I've never treated anyone differently because of their sexuality or skin color. Well, I'm sorry, Scott, but that is a good thing. Treating someone differently because of their sexuality or skin color is now a popular thing amongst the people who are attacking you, to the point that, as we saw with the recently appointed Snow White, they will actually pronounce themselves as racists. And perhaps worst of all, he makes the mistake of sounding like he just don't care. If I get cancelled, then I get cancelled. I don't do this for the money anymore, I do it because I enjoy it. And whilst that is certainly a laudable element, that means that you're not going to fight back. You have announced your surrender. And you've also listed a few things that they absolutely loathe. I am a Republican, he says. I am a Christian, I am pro-life, I believe in God. And that now means that he is a Christian fundamentalist. But at the end of the day, nonsense on Twitter is not going to sink somebody's career. It is the consequences of that nonsense that will do the real damage, both to a person's psychology and also to their wider reputation, as the mainstream press picks up on it. And this is where announcing your surrender becomes a very large problem, because it means that you can fuel near endless cycles of articles and you won't do anything about it. You won't fight back, you won't mock them, you won't denounce them, and you won't demonstrate how fundamentally dishonest they are. Let me show you just a selection here. Five Nights at Freddy's creator resigns from games industry following Trump donation controversy, making it sound as if it's entirely fine to yeet someone because they donate to the wrong person. Five Nights at Freddy's Scott Cawthon retirement controversy explained, as everyone gets their clicks out of it. Five Nights at Freddy creator criticized for donating to anti-LGBTQ candidates, as if he gave money to people who were standing on their soapboxes going, yes, I will eradicate the scourge of the homosexual. Five Nights at Freddy creator Scott Cawthon announces retirement after political donation backlash. A backlash for donating to Trump and other Republicans. And of course, lengthy screeds on how donating to political candidates causes irreparable harm to someone. not citing how, who, or why, but that doesn't matter. You've already surrendered. Now your enemies get to take their victory laps. Why Scott Cawthon is retiring from Five Nights at Freddy's from Newsweek. Bloody Newsweek. Simply moseys on in to get a couple of clicks off the dead corpse. Five Nights at Freddy's Scott Cawthon won't apologize for supporting Trump, as if that's a bad thing. Game developer Scott Cawthon retires after outcry over Trump donations. What outcry? Outcries on Reddit and Twitter, platforms so heavily moderated and purged of anything but SJW thought as to be virtually devoid of it. Fans label Markiplier the real creator of Five Nights at Freddy's after Scott Cawthon gets exposed for allegedly donating to anti-LGBTQ politicians. Again, with the soapbox. Is Scott Cawthon anti-LGBTQ? Internet says gay people rejoice his retirement. Does the internet really say that? And on and on and on and on. These publications, these people, these games journalists are vultures. They are carrion creatures. And if you make it clear that you're not going to resist, they will pick your corpse clean. And as I've made this point on several occasions previously, I will reiterate it once more. Stuff like this, right here, this is a bullseye. This informs them that if they accuse you of certain things, you will be hurt. You will be deeply wounded, in fact, because you're a person who doesn't care about sexuality or gender, and you will try to defend yourself in such mealy-mouthed ways. You will say, I don't care about these things. If I get cancelled, then I guess I get cancelled. You will not fight them. You will not condemn them. And what happens is what we see. Everyone and their grandmother's news site will write articles, will stir up yet further people and more negative sentiment, and you will not have been able to rouse your own fan base up against it, to resist it, to fight it, and to provide a counter-narrative. And it cannot be overstated how important it is to energize people, to bring them on side, to give them something to resist with, something to fight for. Because right now, in this day and age, your favorite content creators can be cancelled for literally nothing. Remember that whole Uncle Bob person? The thing that started the cancellation attempt against the Factorio developer? What exactly had he said that was so controversial? This. The police are not the problem. The police were never the problem. Defunding the police is a terrible policy that will put hundreds, if not thousands, of lives at risk. That is a controversial enough statement to have somebody cancelled. That is the world in which we live right now. And if more people, more developers, don't do like Kovarex, they might as well start looking for another job right now. In the case of Scott Cawthon, he had been talking about retirement on several other occasions previously. He had plenty of money, and maybe indeed this was simply just a good excuse to pull away from it all. I hope that's the case. I pray that's the case, because that would be good at least for him. But for everybody else who doesn't have a comfortable retirement, for all the other developers that may have said something wrong on the internet 3 years ago, you should bear this well in mind. If you don't fight, if you don't initiate it, if you don't stand up and take a stance, well, how do you expect anyone else to come do it for you? People like me will. People that actually genuinely care about free speech online will, but at the end of the day, there's not that many of us. Sadly, that is the tragic reality. Those who will even, much to my shame, defend companies like goddamn Disney when they are in the right. We are a rare and long-threatened breed. We're probably not going to be around for all that much longer. But hopefully, I'll be able to be of some service before my eventual near-inevitable hiatus deletus. Until next time, thank you all very much for watching. And now you've got a much better idea at how all of this went down and why one went so much better than the other. Have a good day.